My nickname. My nickname was Hollywood. Yeah, even before I arrived in Los Angeles, with the dream of becoming a star. See, I was born in a tiny town in Iowa called Story City, whose whole downtown area you could walk across in less than 5 minutes. I mean, Story City? It was really illusions of grandeur. See, I was born in 1932, a pretty boy who became a pretty teenager, who also spent most of his time at the movies dreaming of becoming a star. See, those good looks, along with the desire to become famous, it earned me the nickname Hollywood. But the problem with being handsome and wanting to become an actor is that people automatically label you as stupid. It's like you're not allowed to have brains and good looks. But I knew that I couldn't stay in this little hick town. I knew that I was destined for bigger things, and I needed a bigger pond in order to thrive and become the real me. I also knew that I was gay. Did you know that in the 16th century, the word gay referred to immorality? And in the 19th century, it referred to a woman that was a prostitute and a man that slept with a lot of women. Right? That's pretty ironic, don't you think? Yeah. And it's obvious why gay men would choose a label that links them to immorality. It's that twinkle in our eye says yes, we are perversion. Yes, we are immoral. I arrived in LA in 1949. I was 17 and ready to rule Hollywood. Well, Hollywood had arrived where it belonged. I started working in a diner. I mean, what actor hasn't worked in a diner or a restaurant? I mean, I doubt it. But this diner was in the center of town, and you never knew who you were going to meet that was going to be influential in your career. Let's start your career. So, I flirted with everyone. The men, the women, the old, the young. No level of flirting was beneath me. I did things that should not be proud of, but I was willing to do anything to get my career. Oh, I did do anything. It wasn't until late 1949 that the flirting actually paid off. I was talking to this customer, I fucked him, and he said that he'd introduce me to a friend of his who had his own agency. So we went down there on a Friday afternoon, and this guy, he looked me up and down, and he was like, "Boy, you've got star quality." I was flattered, if not a little shy in this man's presence, but he then said, "The name's gotta go though. You need a new name. A name that all the little girls and the homos will be cooing." And he looked at me silently for a minute or two. "Paris Darnell." He announced it as if it had just come to him. But I believe that he just had a list of names that he allocated to the next actor that was standing in front of him. Paris? Now I know that it's the name of a god, but before I could say anything against the name, "I'm hosting a pool party tomorrow with some of the other actors. You should come along." "Yeah, of course, Mr. Scott. What time?" "Come in the morning, around 11. We'll discuss your career over some lunch and before the other guys arrive." "Yeah, sure, of course. I'll see you then, Mr. Scott." And then he was already looking down at some correspondence on his desk, and I stood there, silent for a minute or two before he looked up and my secretary give you the address. And with that, I left with a new name that I was gonna have to get used to. Now, the next day, I arrived at an hour early. It was a swanky neighborhood, and I hang around with my heart in my mouth and nervous for the meeting to begin, but impatient, really impatient. But I rang the doorbell at 10:59, and the man himself answered. And he was already dressed for the pool party. He had his robe open and his plump belly showing. He looked all right for a man in his 40s. Punctuality. I like it. Don't ever forget you are never too famous to keep people waiting. Come in. Come in. It was a strange sensation. Yeah, a mixed reaction to his words. His words made me feel relaxed, slightly, but his penetrating stare, that was different. See, it made me feel violated. But he led me down the hallway and through a door. And I thought it was leading to a living area. But it was actually a flamboyantly decorated bedroom with a huge four-poster bed as his main centerpiece. I had these scarlet sheets. They were gorgeous. He dropped his robe and he climbed onto the bed. Have you ever felt silk against your skin? No, sir. I haven't. Keep your composure. Whatever he wants. This is your career. This is the moment that will make your career. Come, strip off your clothes and join me. Remember, whatever he wants. I've done a lot worse for a lot less. Keep it in your head that he is going to make Paris Darnell a star. Hey, don't be shy. So I stripped off my clothes silently, and his eyes, they looked at me. They took in every inch of flesh with greed and desire. Come, join me, and fuck me. Fuck me hard. And then we'll have lunch, and we'll talk about how we're gonna make you a star. It's part of the job. In the industry, if you're not a star and you want to become a star, it's part of the job. You fuck whoever you need to in order to become a star. If you're a good enough actor, then they'll believe that you're enjoying it. But you just hope and pray that they don't try and fuck you in return afterwards. Well, he wasn't lying about the party. No, see, I had a suspicion that it was originally just a ploy to get me there alone. But by 3 o'clock, all of the other actors on his books had arrived. And they were ready to party. There were blondes and redheads and brunettes and dark-haired men, and they all had one thing in common. They were really handsome, and they were so fit. Like most of them were toned and fit like myself, but others could only be described as, well, beefcakes. Which I am certain is a term that originated in Mr. Scott's mouth. We drank, we did cocaine, we swam, we kissed, and some of the guys, they had sex right there in front of everyone. And Mr. Scott, he just sat and watched silently. Only speaking when someone asked him a question directly. But that seemed to be his thing. Voyeurism. The pool parties were a regular event. At times we forgot that Mr. Scott was even there. Sometimes he would suck one of us off, but in the main, he just wanted to watch our supple young bodies and gloried in watching the action, whether it was between 2, 3, 4 guys or more. He just loved to watch. It was Independence Day of 1950. I had appeared in 4 movies by then. The first was just a walk-on part, but the others I had lines. Well, I had a line. But that day, I found out I was gonna play my first lead. Yeah, it was in a movie called Island of Desires. It was a B movie and a second-rate script, but I was the lead. I was a bona fide movie star. So I hit the pool party pretty hard that day, and I was on the up. So I was gonna enjoy every second of it. But that day, the party was raided by the police, and Mr. Scott, well, he was nowhere to be seen. I was sprung from jail by Mr. Scott later that day, and he was appalled that had happened at the point when he had just left to go and see one of his neighbors. And now I have a criminal record for lewd conduct. But I also had an agent who was keeping it out of the papers and protecting my image, so I was grateful. But after that, I did everything that the studio asked me to do. I did every movie that they wanted me to make, and some of them were okay, but most of them were stinkers. And I went on dates with some of the most beautiful young women who were also under contract with the studio. So the studio were happy, and Mr. Scott, he was happy. But there was one actress in particular who I really enjoyed having those dates with. She was like a sister or a best friend, and I would tell her about the guy that I was dating at the time, and we joked and laughed, and we just loved one another's company. And it also gave the press the idea that we were young and in love. But I was also a big name with the teenage girls. The films were not challenging. It was a lot of beach films and looking pretty. Not a lot of acting skill required. See, I was now the #1 pinup for teenage girls, and I was on the cover of so many magazines. But when I went to the studio to ask if I could record a song, their eyes must have lit up like dollar signs. I mean, I went and recorded and released the song, and it went straight to a worldwide #1. which was insane. And the studio then bought the rights to a musical, and they put me in it, and my star was on an upward projection that nothing was going to stop. Now, it's 1955, and I'm not the biggest star, but, like, I'm not on the A-list, but I'm certainly on top of the B-list. Ha! There is not a happier star in Hollywood. Nothing was going to stop my ascendancy. And the musical, well, it was a box office hit, but it wasn't quite the massive hit that the studio were expecting, but I mean, it didn't return as much money as they were predicting. And the reviews, they singled me out for criticism for my wooden acting and poor vocals. So the studio blamed me for what they considered a failure of a film. But it was bad, but I could survive. I was still every girl's pinup. Now, what I didn't realize at the time was that the #1 star at Mr. Scott's agency was being threatened by the newspapers. They were going to expose him as a homosexual. Now, he wasn't just an A-list. He was at the top of the A-list. So, Mr. Scott took action to protect his cash cow, and he married his star off to his assistant. And he made a deal with the newspaper. He said, I could offer you 3 homosexuals if you leave my married heterosexual star alone, and I will give you some real homosexuals with a colorful past. The next day, I opened the newspaper to a story about my arrest in 1950 for lewd conduct, and with details about my homosexual relationships. Now, the studio, they actually got behind me for a few days, sending me on dates with new pretty young women who were under contract. But the homosexual stories, they continue. It was less than a week after the story broke that the studio dropped me from my contract and canned the latest dreadful beach film that we had just started filming. Now, nobody expected my star to fall quite so dramatically. Such speed. I mean, I certainly didn't expect it. But I believed that I could ride it out. That most people wouldn't believe the story, and that my pretty face would be bigger news than my immorality. My name was Hollywood, and now it's Paris. Paris Darnell. I was a homosexual. I am a homosexual. I am an immoral gay man. And people in this town think that my career is finished. That by the age of 23, my career is dead.
I've got news for you all. My nickname is Hollywood, and as long as the Hollywood sign is looking down over Los Angeles, I'm destined to be what Story City can never offer me. Box office gold. #1.